We are finally doing it. We're here to talk about
diabetes.
Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the very first episode of Diabetic Diaries. I wanted to start this series for a while. I was like, I need to start this because somebody somewhere out there could see this video and could benefit from it in some way, whether you are a diabetic yourself, if you're recently diagnosed, if you've been a diabetic for a long time and maybe are looking to improve your health journey, you know somebody who is diabetic, either a family member or a loved one, or possibly you're a personal trainer or wanting to become a personal trainer and have a diabetic client. You want to make sure that you are able to take care of them to the best of your ability. Myself, being a type 1 diabetic, decided I wanted to just put some videos out there with as much information from my own first-hand experience. So today we are starting off with my story of being diagnosed. Also just the basics of what is diabetes. Specifically today, what is type 1 diabetes, which is what I have. There are two types of diabetes, type 1, type 2. We're going to be focusing on type 1. To begin my story. Let's go back. I was 13 years old when I was diagnosed. I was in 8th grade. I have been a diabetic now for 15 years. I'll let you do the math. You can figure out how old I am. I did not recognize the symptoms right away. I was a kid and I had no idea what diabetes was or that there were even signs to look for. Afterwards, looking back and looking at the symptoms that I had over the summer between my 7th and 8th grade year, I lost a decent amount of weight. But I also grew a couple inches. We just thought it was me becoming an awkward, gangly teenager. I was thirsty all the time. I could not drink enough water. Not only was I thirsty all the time, but when I would drink water, the taste of it was so good, almost sweet. That's how badly I was dehydrated. When I got to school in the fall, my teachers noticed that I had lost a significant amount of weight and they became concerned that I had actually developed an eating disorder. So they went to the school nurse. School nurse called my mom. My mom was like, well, you clearly don't know my daughter. But my mom said, well, there are some thyroid problems in our family, and I didn't find this out until much later, but apparently if I would go to the restroom after eating, my mom would listen at the door to make sure that I wasn't throwing up my food. I was not. We went to the doctor to have some blood work done. Again, my mom was thinking some thyroid problems. That night, the doctor called my house at, I think, around midnight. I was asleep. The doctor called and asked my parents, where is your daughter? He said that they needed to get me to the hospital immediately. I think they were afraid that I was going to go into a coma in my sleep. When I got to the hospital, I was around somewhere between 5'6" and 5'7", I want to say. I was so dehydrated and it happened so quickly that I was 95 pounds. 95 pounds. That's how rapidly I had deteriorated within just a couple of days. My blood glucose, which for a normal person on average will range between 80 and 120 max. My blood sugar was somewhere between 400 and 500, which isn't even that bad. Most diabetics don't realize they're diabetic until they're almost in a coma and their blood sugar is like 800 or 900. Yeah, that was how I found out that I was diabetic. I was lucky that we caught it early before anything really terrible happened. That night was very scary for me. I had never been in a hospital before. Also, because I was just so uninformed about what diabetes is, I didn't know if that meant that I was going to be a vegetable and not be able to leave my bed. I didn't know if I'd be able to eat normal food ever again, if I'd be able to participate in any sports or be active. At that point, I was dancing and horseback riding and playing volleyball. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do any of those things again or even hang out normally with my friends ever again. Once I found out what was really involved in being a diabetic, I adapted very quickly. I was young, so that was easy. I never really had a problem with needles, which is an essential requirement when you're a diabetic. You don't really have a choice. You get used to needles very quickly. Once I went through my initial, learning period, learning the beginning ins and outs of it, I was on insulin injections for 1 year, and then I transitioned over to my insulin pump, which is this guy right here. Plugs into my body. Can you see? But we'll save that for a separate video because that's a whole other slew of information. And have been on the insulin pump ever since. Now, let's just get into the sort of meat and potatoes of this video, which is what even is diabetes?
Time for us to learn how to say diabetes. Some people say diabetes. Oh, well, for grammar, it's the same. Diabetes.
Some of you might have sort of a general idea of what it involves, and some of you are really kind of clueless. Oftentimes, you think of older people or overweight people.
I have an army. We have a Hulk.
I have diabetes.
And that is typically type 2 diabetes. So what is type 1 diabetes? Commonly referred to as juvenile diabetes because it tends to set in when you're young. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Essentially means that the body produces antibodies which attack its own tissues. My body started destroying the cells in my pancreas which produce insulin. If you want to know the technical term, they're called the islets of Langerhans. It's a mouthful. They're essentially the beta cells in your pancreas that produce the hormone insulin. Type 1 diabetes is also genetic. My grandfather had it. It tends to skip a generation. I was the lucky grandchild. They don't know yet what triggers it. They don't know exactly what causes the body to switch and say we're going to start attacking your cells. There's some research being done that it could be something as simple as the common cold virus. The body just starts making antibodies to fight off whatever it is and then decide that the cells in your own body are the enemy and start attacking them and killing them off. My pancreas no longer produces insulin. It's not completely useless because the pancreas does other things in regards to digestion, but as far as insulin goes, it's dead. Therefore, I require insulin hormone therapy in order to live. Insulin is the hormone that allows your body to use the food you've eaten, which turns into glucose, and it allows the cells in your body to absorb that glucose to be used for energy. It's basically the key to open the door to let the glucose into your cells. Without insulin, the glucose in your body will build up and build up and build up because it's not being absorbed. Eventually, you will start having major organ failure, specifically your kidneys, because your kidneys will be trying to flush all that sugar out of your body will overload and you will go into kidney failure, then eventually you will go into a coma and you will die. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but without insulin, I would die. I know, morbid stuff. So as long as I take my insulin, monitor my blood glucose throughout the day, and that requires me using a tester, which will be in a separate video, and eating relatively healthy, diabetics should eat the way everybody should eat. Everything within moderation. I can have dessert, carbs, and sweet treats, and I do, but just within moderation. That way you don't require so much insulin and you don't put yourself at risk of having major blood sugar fluctuations. So monitoring what I eat, taking insulin, testing my blood sugar, and staying active, which is the other major focus of my channel. channel here is fitness. A big thing that I want to say here also though is that I am far from the perfect diabetic. I actually have a joke with most of my friends that I am the world's worst diabetic. I don't always test myself when I should, as often as I should. Sometimes I forget to take insulin after I eat, and then I have to deal with high blood sugars and not feeling very good for a few hours. I have the worst sweet tooth out of almost anybody I know. I do want to point out those boxes are chocolate that I got from Harry Potter World when I went with my family. I don't eat it all in one sitting though, if that makes you feel any better. It makes me feel a little better. But I want to use this platform and this series as a way to not only help other people, but a way to hold myself accountable for my own health. I think that this will be a good way for me to not only keep up with my own health, but to help you, help yourself, help other people, kind of get the word out about diabetes. I feel like as much information as we can get out there and share with the world about this disease, the better. I want to keep these short because I don't want to bore you. There's so much information. So, if you have any questions at all, please leave them down below. I will answer everybody that leaves any questions. If I get enough questions on one certain topic or another, I will make another video specifically targeting those questions. And yeah, I hope this was helpful in some way. Stay tuned for the next one. I will be talking specifically about my insulin pump and how that works in insulin therapy in general. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye! What is diabetes? Diabetes cat. No. Stop. Take two. Horns. Always. What was that? Who am I?
Who says diabetes?